Well, welcome into a very exciting episode of The Scene. Today, I'm joined by my new friend, Sammy Garrity from the brand Catalyst. Welcome to the show, Sammy.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Well, I told him your name. Why don't you tell us what the brand Catalyst is and what it does?
Oh my gosh. Well, I am the brand catalyst. My husband is the impact catalyst, and together we are the impact catalysts. And we have two sides to our business. We have the impact catalyst, which is for entrepreneurs, business owners, change makers, people that are really mission driven. They know that they have something bigger than themselves. It goes beyond just building a business now. They know there's a bigger calling and they want to explore that and really make an impact. And I learned the hard way, having had four near miss heart attacks in 3.5 months, chase and just walk away. Money just what
Sammy, if you can hear
you'll
me,
get
I'm gonna
paid for
stop you.
the
Sammy, if you can hear me,
oh,
I'm gonna stop you real quick just because I don't know if it's your connection or mine. It just totally went
okay.
to, and you were glitching out and everything was
Oh,
happening. So, oh no. And there you went. So I'm guessing it must have been yours. Well, welcome into a very exciting episode of The Scene. I am your host, Bubba Startz, and with me today is Sammy Garrity from the brand Catalyst.
I'm so excited to be here. I really am. Thank you for inviting me on your show.
Well, it's my pleasure completely. And we found each other through some Facebook groups. So we're just getting to know each other.
We
So I've
did.
told them your name and your business, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you and your husband do?
Oh, thank you. Well, my husband and I, we're on a real mission to make an impact and to make our impact through those that we serve. I think that individually we're one drop, but together we can be the ocean, right? And the great thing about our experience over the years is I burned out big time when I was 38, and I because I was trying to fill this hole inside of me. And I didn't know what that hole was, but I thought that success and money and fame would fill that hole. And then when I achieved all of that, I still felt empty and just spiritually bankrupt. It still wasn't doing it. And so I built five very big businesses at the same time, had four near miss heart attacks in 3.5 months. And that's when I realized, you know what, my heart is hurting for a reason. I need to just take a boop, boop, boop back here and just see like why is this happening? I'm doing all the things that I thought I was meant to do to be able to feel the way I thought I was meant to feel, and yet I still feel empty. And and so ultimately I had to make a decision that I'd made myself so unhealthy chasing success that I needed to just take a complete time out. So I ended up selling my multi-million business for £1 so that I could just hand it over and walk away completely, just be released to not have anything taking up that space in my brain and see what did God have in store for me. And so while I was waiting, it was that period of waiting, and I think that's the hardest time, isn't it? Is when you're between things. And I was in that period of the in between, thinking, well, what am I meant to do? And at that time, I was a believer. I believed that there was something bigger, but I didn't have a relationship with God at that time. And so I started to ask the universe, because that's what everyone else seemed to be doing. And so I was asking the universe, all right, universe, what am I meant to be doing? And I wasn't getting an answer. So I thought, you know what, while I wait for the answer of what is my purpose, I'm gonna just use what I already know. And so I knew business. I knew how to build businesses, and I'd been my qualifications were all in branding and PR and marketing. I thought, you know what, I can teach some people how they can do it while I work out what my purpose is. So I set out, because if I'm going to do something, I go all in with it. And so I decided I was going to build the world's largest brand building resource for entrepreneurs of purpose driven businesses. What I didn't realize was that would become my purpose. And it was just the most phenomenal journey. And over the last 14 years, we've done so many things. And since we started that side of the business, the how to build a brand side, I mean, it took us all over the world speaking, running webinars, launching other companies around the world, and being on documentaries, doing the most amazing things and supporting people. And in that process, I then met my now husband, Greg, and he was doing that. He was building 7 businesses, and the two of us just met on that journey. But when you're in flow and you're going for it, there's a point where you start doing things because people tell you that's why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And they start to have more of a say than our amazing creator does, right?
Well,
And we start listening.
and because you're so capable and you could do any of those things that they've listed off, we just go do them, right?
Right. Yeah. And we don't realize that that can take us away from our purpose. And so we started listening, which, that's an important thing to do is to listen to your customers, but everybody has an opinion, right? And so we started to, I think, spread ourselves too thinly. And we ended up building by accident a global business and a global network where we were running 34 events all around the world every month. And some days we had something happening in Brisbane on the same day that we had something happening in New York and something happening in London or Holland. And it just grew. And we had this amazing network of people who were going through our programs, building their brands and their businesses, and then saying, I want to set this up here. And so we were like, okay, let's do it. And we spread ourselves so thin. And I know that, lockdown and the COVID time was a terrible time for so many. For me, it really was a great reset because we lost our business overnight because we'd built it physically. And so, it'd gone from everything being online to being physical. And so we lost everything overnight. And it was a very traumatic time, but also it was a time I can look back on now and say, now I see what God was doing because I was getting so carried away listening to everyone and being pulled in all so many different directions that I wasn't listening to him. And he was trying to say, but this is like, this is the easy route. Take this. But if you're using your own thinking and you're trying to think your way through this, it's going to be so much harder. Well, I took the hard route and learned my lesson. And so the biggest lesson that I really learned through that was there's 3 things, and I call them the 3 V's. The first thing is, what is the vision for your life? Because your vision for your business and the vision for where you're going, we tend to give lots of attention to that. And then it overtakes our life. And then we don't end up with a life because we're doing everything for the business and we're doing everything for what people are wanting us to do instead of really staying in lane with our calling. What life do we want this business to give us is really important as a question. And I'd never considered that. And so therefore I didn't have a life because I gave all of myself and more to the detriment of my health to the vision of the business. So the first thing that I realized was we need to have a really powerful, strong vision for our life and be completely connected to what is the bigger kind of quest, the thing that I want to do, that all these things I'm getting involved with are actually going to drive me towards, going to help me to achieve that. And the second thing is values. I was getting so pulled into everything else that everyone else was doing that I wasn't being true to the values that are really key to me, that are important to me. Family is one of those values, and I wasn't even seeing my family. So knowing what your values are really important. And the third thing is your value. And I'd got so caught up in everything that I was doing that I'd lost a sense of who I was, my value, my identity. It was so easy to become what everyone else is. And oh, they're successful, they're doing these things. So therefore that must be what I should be doing. And I lost myself along the way. And I realized that, this is actually about who we are being as we are doing what we're doing. And that's what makes the greatest impact because people are watching you. They're watching you. They're watching how you show up. They're watching how kind you are, how generous you are. They're watching who you're being as you're doing the things you do. And that is making an impact. And so we launched Impact Catalysts for entrepreneurs and CEOs and mission-driven people. Don't even need to be a business owner, but someone who's mission-driven, just wants to do something in their community, but wants to make the greatest impact and the greatest ripple that they can with what they have. And that's been our mission for the last 2 years now. And so I'm the brand catalyst and Greg's the impact catalyst. And that's what we do. Crazy journey to get here.
Incredible. Someone, actually, I do believe it was Mo Train. Shout out to Mo. He started that Podcasters of Facebook group, which I don't know that he ever dreamed that it would grow to the heights that it has now. But I think
Yeah,
he set out with
thank
that mission
goodness.
in the first place. But one thing that he put just yesterday, he kind of did a little question, and always very poignant with the questions too. But it was, what metrics do you use to measure success in your
Hmm.
podcast?
Mm.
And I just put in big capital letters, lives changed, because that's
Yep.
what this is about.
Yeah.
I have said it many times, and people who are listening to these episodes coming out consecutively, they're going to get annoyed by it probably, but this is how God is speaking to us. This is how God is
Absolutely.
speaking through each one of us, through our stories, through sharing it. And I'm not an overly religious person. Came from more of the ask the universe, right? I am very in tune with who I am becoming, because I'm not there yet. But everything that you have said, I could cut you off right now. Thank you. Have a night, right? Like,
Thank you. Bye.
well, and listeners of our program are going to do that because I'm having the same conversations with people. I'm part of a network called the C-Suite Network, which was started by a man named Jeff Hazlett, who's a speaker. And he built this because there was a need for people in that C-suite to
Mm.
deliver message. It was very business oriented,
Mhm.
right? I'm kind of one of their first dips into more of the entertainment world, but having met me and having seen his pitch, right? His keynote, where I was like, just give me his script. I'll go sell that. I can do speaking. I come from the music side, Sammy.
Yeah.
That's what the Scene Projects was started from was I had a new single last February and I wanted to get it out there and talk to people. So I did the two podcasters I know in the whole state of South Dakota. I did the local news and I thought I was going to be a rock star. And I went in to do the second podcast interview with my friend Dave Holly. And not only was I inspired because everything that he had in that studio, I had in my house, just accumulating, right? And then he gave me a Zoom P4, which is just a little, box unit, but you can plug a microphone into it, but I could plug my phone into it. So before I
Mm.
ever started doing Zoom, it was just phone calls with my friends. And then I started recording some of our live shows together. And then I fell in love with having conversations. And I fell in love with healing myself through conversations with people. I just got off a Zoom
Mm.
call for 2 hours with my business partner, and we didn't speak a lick of business. It was
Yeah.
my grandma's birthday today. I shared with you, I think, on the other the other recording, but my granny's birthday would have been today. We lost her a few years ago. So I started off the morning with a lot of tears and a lot of
Mm.
healing that needed to be done, and a letter that I'd recently written to my father with 25 years of pain behind it, and all of this letting go that I'm doing so that I can be fresh to come into our brand awakening. The Scene Projects are finally arriving in the
Yeah.
podcasting world. We have 130 episodes probably, and
That's
another 30 that
awesome.
I've done in the last 2 weeks, Sammy. This is what I enjoy. This is what
Yeah.
I love. I love sharing my story. I love hearing your story and seeing where we can relate. My side of the story is from the depths, where yours is the heights. Mine is I was in prison 5 years ago, or now it's been 6 or 7 years ago, right? But I would have never connected with Sammy and heard this beautiful story if not for God and not
Yeah.
being someone overly religious. I was saying before, you can call it source or creator. No, call it what it is. It's God.
Hmm.
He's
Yep.
speaking to you. My partner Teresa, who our new venture, she's going to be mad at me. I won't release this until we got it all settled on the business side, but it is a podcast network, not for broadcasting, but for supporting the Midwest Podcasting Network to support other people in not just their podcasting journey, but in their life journey. And
Yeah.
and our mission is to change lives. And if there's
Yep.
only one life
Impact.
changed per conversation, and that life is me, then it's successful, right? And
Amen.
that just such a beautiful thing to then come into the next conversation 10 minutes later, and it's Sammy Garrity telling me about her business.
But it's so funny because like last night, I woke up this morning having had a dream about my grandmother. My grandma, she was never religious, but she had a profound visitation from Jesus 6 months before my parents broke up, and we went to live with my grandparents. So I spent all my time growing up with conversations about Jesus without even like having opened a Bible. Like, my grandma had this amazing relationship with God that nobody else could understand because I spent so much time with her. I grew up with that. And I woke up. This is the first time I think I've ever had a dream about my grandma since she passed away in 2013. And I dreamt that she was I was sitting in this restaurant and I was waiting for her to arrive. And she came walking up and she I was sitting down and she leant over and I was just like, I just had my head and I was looking up into her face and she was looking down at me, like just such pride, just such love. And I'm so proud of you. Like, just keep going. And you tell the story about your, writing a letter to your dad. God, didn't realize it was going to be one of these kind of interviews today. I did the very same thing to my biological father. I wrote a letter to him that I never sent, but I wrote the letter, it must be about 6 years ago, forgiving him just completely for everything. And the sense of relief, even knowing that I was never going to send that letter. You may have sent yours. I didn't. I didn't send mine. But the relief and the release that that gave me, I think was also part of the contribution to that big hole that I had in me that was just craving something to fill it. And, you talk about God. I didn't ever have that relationship with God. My grandma was the one that passed messages to me. So I didn't realize that I could have a relationship with him. I thought this was something that other people did and then passed it on to me. And then I took a client on to do all of her branding work 10 years ago. And her whole business is God, right? Everything about it. And so this over the last 10 years that I've been branding her books and doing all of her stuff, it's been leading me in and this curiosity towards it. Just a year ago, Greg and I flew to America to speak at a conference in Vegas about how to take your idea global. And so we're there to speak at this conference. And while we're in the hot tub, my husband gets this word from God. Now, my husband was a humanist, didn't even believe, and he wasn't happy about me even curiously looking into this. And so we're sitting there, and he gets this word from God, and he turns to me and he said, "I've just had a word from God." I said, "You don't even believe in God. What? What do you mean you've had a word from God?" And he said, "I just know that it's from God. God is telling me that Texas is my spiritual homeland. This is where I'm meant to be." And I said, "What do you mean homeland? You never use that kind of language." He said, "I can only tell you what God has said." And I said, "So do you believe in God or don't you believe it?" Like, we had this whole conversation around it. I was like, I'd never heard him speak like that. And we were just in the process of moving when we got back from that speaking tour. We were moving to Barcelona in Spain. We'd been living on a boat for 4 years, traveling around England and all the canal networks. And so we've got a pretty adventurous life. But we were just like, well, hang on a minute. We're just about to move to Spain. How can Texas be your spiritual homeland? And so we just said, no, just hearing things. And so we moved to Spain. We take 3 months touring around the coast of France, land in Spain. We've moved to Barcelona. We've been living there for like 10 days when a member of Greg's family passes away. And so we have to go back to England for the funeral. So we go back to England 2 days before we're due to fly back. And I'm up for an award in London. So we're doing that and then coming back to Barcelona. And the Friday night before I'm due to drive to London to do this award ceremony, I go out to take the dogs for a walk. And as I'm walking the dogs for their last walk of the night, I hear verbally in my right ear, "Why are you going to Barcelona? You know you're meant to be in Texas. Why are you putting Barcelona in the way?" And I just stood frozen and thought, has someone just said that to me? As someone like, and there was no one there. This was like pitch black, taking the dogs for their last walk. So I thought I must have just imagined that. So I walked down onto the boat. And as I close the boat up and I walk in, Greg says, I've just got to say something to you. I don't want you to do anything with it because I don't know what to do with it, but don't say anything. Just let me say it. And I said, okay. Oh my gosh, what is this going to be? And he said, I just had another word from God. Really? He said, yeah. I said, so what did he say this time? He said, Texas is your spiritual homeland. Don't go back to Barcelona. Go to Texas. Go now. And I said, and I burst out laughing. He said, well, it's not that funny. What are you laughing for? And I said, well, I've just had the same word. What are we supposed to do about this? And he said, well, I think God's wanting us to go to Texas. And I said, so what do we do? And he said, we go to Texas.
God bless
Really?
Texas.
Right? I said, uh, okay. So we called our friend, that our client here, and I said, we've both had this word from God. Like, we know that we're supposed to do this. She said, well, you better get over here. So we booked a flight. I flew over 2 days later, came to stay with her, thinking, I'll come out for a few weeks and just see, is this what we're meant to be doing? Anyway, within 5 days, we'd signed an 18-month contract on the house, not even knowing if we could get here, started the immigration process, got a car, like got everything sorted. She said, you better go back and clean house. So we went, I arrived back in England on the 5th of December of 2023, and we had a month. We were moving out here for our first assignment here. So we haven't quite moved to Texas yet, but we're out here just learning ministry because that's what God is calling us to do. And we were just so confused at the time. But the instruction was everything has got to go. You haven't got time to sell anything. You just give it away and go. So we gave everything away. We gave our car to a family that needed it. We just gave it all away in complete faith. We were told to close all of our business down, all of our business, everything we'd built up over like the 4 years since we'd gone into lockdown and lost everything. We'd built everything back up again, give it all away. The one thing he allowed us to keep was our Impact Catalyst program. He said, you're going to need that because as you're growing leaders and as you're helping, what did he say? Helping my leaders to lead well and make the impact that I designed and created them to make. As you're helping them to do, they're going to need that program. That's the only thing. That was the only thing we were allowed to keep. We had to get rid of like 90+% of all of our income. We gave everything away, and we just came here knowing we were supposed to go into ministry. And this last year, we picked up our first Bible in the January. Had a car accident that meant we didn't have a vehicle in the like June time. So then I was taking Greg on a date night. I said, how are we going to get there? He said, let's Uber. So we Uber. We go on this date night to the cinema. The guy who picks us up in an Uber to bring us back turns out to be a minister who's raced all over the world, is a jockey, went into ministry, built a chapel on their racetrack, was ministering to all of the jockeys and the horse riders that were coming in from around the world, went into ministry full time. And he said, you know what? He said, business dropped out for me because he has a tree surgery business, just dropped out for me a couple of weeks ago, just from everything to nothing. And I said, wow, that's crazy. And he was talking about this journey. So that's why I'm Ubering. And then we get in his taxi and he says, like we're talking, and he says, if do you go to church? Are you looking for a church? And we said, maybe. He said, well, you haven't got a car. Let me pick you up. And so he picked us up on the Sunday, took us to church. That became our church. So we were planted in a church. We've got so many amazing miracle stories. And so we come out to Texas as much as we can now to go to that church. They've got 9 campuses. We're learning ministry. And what we know for sure now that we're being led to, God said last May, you're going to bring 100,000 people back to Christ. And I said, how can I be the one that does that, Lord? Like, how can I be that? This is so new for me. Why would you choose me to do that? Surely you want somebody who's been a part of the church and who understands this, because this isn't about religion. It's the relationship with you. How am I supposed to be the one that does that? And he said, you'll see. And just as we've been sharing our stories, people have said, you just left everything. You just got a word from God and just left everything. You've restored my faith today. We're like, oh, Wow. So literally people who are already, believers, faith-based, but have maybe lost their faith, or they're sitting on the fence, or something has happened to them, and it's making them question it. And so we're really on that journey. And he said to me just last week, as I was sharing with you before he came on here, he said, "You see all of these things that you've been paid to create?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "And I've got thousands of online courses and resources and programs and books and all kinds of things we've written." He said, "Like, I've blessed you to create those. Now I want you to bless others. You're going to give all of that away." And so we're now creating a resource called Grapevine, which will be an online resource that Christians and faith-based business owners will be able to get the support and the tools and the experience they need to help grow the kingdom, and to
Incredible.
be successful in that. It's like, I don't know how we're going to do it, but God knows.
Well, you just have to have faith, right? And
Absolutely.
I think you just shared the parable of the mustard seed, right? That
Absolutely.
the faith, and that's I've been running on faith for a year now, pretty much. It's coming up on. I quit my job. I was making, a decent living, right? 50, $60,000 a year for a
Yeah.
welder. And we don't spend a lot. We live in rural South Dakota. So, our mortgage is like $600 a month, right? And I just couldn't do it anymore. God was calling me to something bigger. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know it was podcasting. I know that now, but it's beyond this. It's helping. My goal is a million podcasters, right? Not a million
Amen.
podcast episodes. Not That's easy. Those are easy numbers.
Yep.
I think there's 8 billion humans on this planet right now. There's 8 billion
Each of
stories,
them have a story.
each one of them a different expression of God, right? And we are
Yep.
all children of this. We are
Yep.
all expressions of this. Then we share our stories. That's how we connect. That is how God is speaking through us, and no more evident than our conversation today. I got to
Mm.
get you out of here because I got
Mm.
another conversation with God. And I'm so appreciative of you. I know we're going to be talking again. Obviously, I
Yes.
think you would be very interested in knowing our business, and I would be
Well,
interested
I'm going to
in
have you on
finding
our
out
show
more.
as well.
Well, that would be wonderful. I really look forward to it. Is there a website that we can go to learn more about you guys?
Yeah, if you go to theimpactcatalysts.com, so that's got an S on the end, theimpactcatalysts.com, and our YouTube channel is The Kingdom Catalyst, which is now this side of the business that God is calling us to. So come and join us there and make the most of all the free resources that He's having me give away.
Well, I know I will be, and a lot of other people behind us will be as well, because we are one of those teachers. I am one of those leaders. And God has brought us together for a beautiful reason. So, Sammy,
Amen.
thank you so much for your
Stay
time
blessed.
today.
You're very welcome. Stay blessed, guys.